Howdy, Philly, and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at John chapter 5, verses 36 through 37. But first, last time in John chapter 5, here is our rubric. Let's go ahead and get started. Ego de echo tein marturion mezzo tu Ioannu. Tagar erga ha dedoken moi hopeter ina hina teleioso auta. Auta ta erga ha poio marture peri emu. Hoti ho pater me apastalken. Kai ho pimpsos me pater ekenos mem martureken peri emu. Ute phonein autu popote akekoate ute eidos autu heorakate. Very first word is an unnecessary pronoun. So we know that Jesus is again being emphatic, as he has been a lot this chapter. Nothing particular about de, and then echo is the first principal part, so we don't need to parse that. Tein marturion, we can see from the eta nu and the alpha nu are the direct object of echo, so that's accusative, singular, feminine. And then mezzo is our first genuinely interesting word, not verb. Mezzo comes from megas, and you'll note that there's a significant change between megas and mezzo. We have epsilon iota diphthong with zeta instead of the just plain old epsilon and the gamma. And then omega is our ending. This is the accusative singular form, and it is feminine, so it's modifying marturion. And it's very curious that there's no nu, and I forget exactly why it goes to omega in this form. And of particular note is we have the comparative rather than the positive form, which is what megas is. And then this explains why we then have tu Ioannu with omicron upsilon here, genitive singular masculine. Mezzo demands a genitive for the comparison to be complete. So I myself have a witness, the witness, greater than John. Moving on into our next clause, ta, the nominative or accusative plural article, clearly going with erga as its object. And then note that this alpha is aspirated. The grave accent doesn't matter very much because we've got dedoken here already with an accent. This being on the only and final syllable of this word has to become a grave. The a is from hos. That is an awful sigma, sorry. He, ho. I can never remember the accent. I think it's circumflex and acute there. This also being the nominative or accusative plural neuter, because erga is nominative or accusative plural neuter. But to figure out which of the two, we need to take a look at the verb. Dedoken, delta epsilon is reduplication on the stem of the verb, and then the kappa will confirm for us that this is the perfect form. Epsilon nu is the third person singular. It's active and it is indicative. Neuter nouns can take singular verbs, which is kind of peculiar, but in this case erga is not, because right next to it we have ho pater, this ho telling us that pater is nominative, which should be clear too since it's the third declension. Singular, masculine, the subject of dedoken. Dedoken needs a direct object, can't be moi, because moi is dative, singular, due to the iota there. So ta, erga, he specifically must be the object of dedoken. But then why do we need a he if we've already got ta, erga? As we've got for the works which. Dedoken is in a relative clause, so it's not the main verb. Something else must be going on. So we need to look ahead before we can actually translate this properly and actually determine which of the two erga is. But ha, we can definitively say, is accusative, not nominative, plural, neuter. Looking after pater, we have a different clause, hina, so this is going to be purpose. And with teleoso, this omega tells us that there is going to be a subjunctive form. So this is teleo, I want to say. Because there is a stem change. And yeah, now I'm not remembering if telos, the verb form of telos, is a contract or not. I think it is a contract with epsilon. I could be wrong. But the omega, at the very least, added before our personal ending, which is so, onto the stem, which is tele, indicates subjunctive. Tele is the aorist stem. There's no augmenting vowel at the beginning because it's not indicative, and indicative is the only form that verbs have that takes the augmenting vowel at the beginning. All of the other verb forms lack them in the aorist and the imperfect. So that's omega there. It's first person singular. Aorist, as I've already said. Active, subjunctive with the hina clause. And teleoso is taking auta, which refers back to erga, so I should draw an arrow as its object. So accusative, plural, neuter. Now, that still doesn't tell us what's going on with ta, erga, whether nominative or accusative, which means we've got to keep looking forward. Or it could just be that this is a statement of what's the important thing that Jesus wants to point to, and then ha is offsetting it with all of this, and there is no verb that goes with this. There is no other clause that goes with this. It's just basically a declarative statement. But we can't know until we go through. So, still no translating. Auta, again, same thing here. Auta ta erga. Now, since you've got the article with erga, we need to change how we treat auta rather than these things to these same works. So auta has, I don't know what the English word would be for describing that, but we should treat auta as the same. Ta erga, and again, ha, one more time, poio. Circumflex should tell us that this is contract, which we should know, this being a very common verb. Poieo, epsilon, eliding, or yeah, it's not crassus. It's contracting into the omega. This is just the first person singular present tense, active, indicative. Ha then must be another accusative, plural, neuter as its direct object. The same works which I do, and here we finally have it. Marture, epsilon iota with the circumflex. We know that this verb is a contract, martureo, epsilon omega. This one being the third person singular due to the ending. No change in the stem, and it would be epsilon iota whether or not it was a contract. Since there is no change in the stem, there's no augmenting vowel, so present tense, active, and indicative. Jesus can't be the one doing it because he's the first person, so it must be the next nearest thing, can't be the Father, too far away, and it's got to be ta erga. So in this case, these, the same works, not just these, the same, must be nominative, plural, neuter all together, not accusative. As the subject of marture, these same works witness peri emu, prepositional phrase I think we've seen a number of times before this chapter. Omicron upsilon, it's taking the genitive, singular, and it's common. That epsilon is emphasizing it even more, though with how many of these emphasized first person pronouns that we've seen, I'm beginning to wonder if the Koine that John is using just uses those forms of me. It goes for eme rather than me, emu rather than mu. I don't remember John recording anything really without the epsilon intensifier. So maybe there's an emphasis going on here. I don't know. Concerning me, new clause, but since we have this here, telling us those are nominative, I think that we can now go back and properly deal with this. Because we have effectively the same thing, just without the auta, and auta here wouldn't make sense because he hasn't spoken about the works before. But the two ta erga here as the subject of martyre indicates to me that it's probably intended that this ta erga is also nominative, and this is just a repetition of that. Since he's had a relative clause and then a clause within the relative clause, he needs to auta, say, yes, these same, and repeat the subject of martyre there. So I'm going to treat this, not that it makes much difference in the way we translate it, but treat it as nominative. Subject going through auta ta erga to martyre. I'm pausing my translation. I realize I have probably made a mistake. Since there is no article with auta, I should not be saying the same. Instead, it should just be these works. So that's an error on my part. Sorry. Moving on into our final clause of verse 36, ho pater. We've already parsed that. It's just nominative singular subject. Me is accusative singular common. And then apostolken we've seen before. This is our verb. Note the augmenting vowel there, telling us it's a past tense, either imperfect or aorist. Epsilon nu is third person singular. This is apostello, apostelo, apostolka. So the kappa with the epsilon, no reduplication at the beginning, tells us aorist tense and active and indicative, that the Father sent me. Moving on into verse 37, kai ho pempsos. Since you have the psi here changing the stem of this verb, we know that it's not going to be present tense. Taking a look at the front, though, there is no augmenting vowel, which means it can't be indicative if it is a past. The alpha sigma is not a form that the future would use, so this is not going to be future. Therefore, it must be a participle in the aorist tense. Alpha sigma, especially with the article, is going to be nominative, singular, masculine, aorist, active, participle. Me, already parsed, don't need to do it again. Pater, still nominative as we've seen it before. Ekenos, omicron sigma, tells us nominative, singular, masculine, referring back to the Father. And I think he's going with ekenos since he's already got autas spread all throughout here. So he's changing to a different type of demonstrative or different type of pronoun. Mem martureken, got the reduplication telling us perfect tense. Kappa, epsilon, nu, third person singular then, and active indicative. Moving on into the next clause, ute and not, phonein, eta nu, accusative, singular, feminine, autu, omicron, upsilon, owning phone, but we don't need to parse it, it's common enough. Popote is adverb. This one means ever. And now I can't remember if there's a special form for never, but that's not important because it doesn't even show up here. Akekoate, here on the other hand, is an unusual thing. I don't know why I said on the other hand. This comes from akuo. So that's the verb for hearing. It's really weird. And back in the day, I knew why it changed. This might be an entirely different verb where the tense, what tense is this? Akuo, akuso, ekusa, akekoa. I think it's perfect. Yeah, it's got to be perfect tense. It might just be that a different related verb was used for the perfect tense of akuo, and so it fell into common usage, and the original perfect form disappeared. That's possible, or it could just be that this is an unusual reduplication that we're seeing at the beginning. But the alpha is an indicator for us that this is the perfect tense. Otherwise, you just need to know the principal parts. So ate, that's going to be second person plural, perfect, active, indicative. Ute, nor, eidos, omicron sigma, nominative, singular, masculine. Autu, owning, eidos. He orakate, another alpha, and this kappa should again indicate to us that this is going to be another perfect tense. This is from horao opsomai edon heoraka, yeah, fourth principal part. Another interesting change from that verb. but the kappa and the alpha are the big indicators there. Same form, so I'm just going to pull that over. So, and not his voice ever have you heard, nor his, we could say, image, his appearance. I think appearance makes the most sense here, since elsewhere, and I'm afraid I don't remember the specific reference, Jesus, or maybe it's Paul that does this, talks of himself as the image of the Father. So there are verses 36 and 37. Let's take a look at them in their own context. I also myself have the witness greater than John. For the works which the Father has given to me, so that I do them once because of the aorist, these works which I am doing witness about me myself, that the Father sent me. And the one sending me, Father, that one has witnessed about me myself. Neither his voice have you ever heard, nor his appearance have you seen. And we should know that's pretty obviously the case, since no one has ever seen the Father and lived. I'm going to make this the starting page for the, I think, next and final section of this chapter, rather than going through all of the rest of them. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope taking a look at this has been helpful, and I hope that you have a very good day. Farewell.